The story begins in ancient Israel, a land caught in the middle of war. The Israelites faced their powerful enemies, the Philistines, who had gathered their armies for battle. On one side of the valley stood the soldiers of Israel, trembling in their armor. On the other side stood the Philistines, proud and confident, led by a warrior unlike any other. His name was Goliath, a giant over 9 feet tall, armored in bronze, his presence so terrifying that no one dared to face him. Each day, Goliath walked into the valley, raising his booming voice, mocking Israel, and challenging anyone brave enough to fight him. Fear gripped the hearts of Saul, the king of Israel, and his men. For 40 days, Goliath's voice thundered through the hills, but no one stepped forward. This is the moment when the story of courage and faith begins. It is not the story of the strongest warrior, but of a young shepherd boy who believed that faith was stronger than fear, and that God's power was greater than any enemy. While soldiers trembled on the battlefield, a boy named David tended his father's sheep in the fields of Bethlehem. David was the youngest of 8 sons, overlooked by many, yet filled with a heart for God. His days were spent under the open sky, playing his harp, singing songs of worship, and protecting the flock from lions and bears. Though small in stature, David's courage had been shaped in the wilderness. When danger struck, he didn't run away. He fought with confidence that God was with him. One day, David's father Jesse sent him to deliver food to his older brothers at the battlefield. As David approached the camp, he heard Goliath's insults echoing through the valley. Unlike the soldiers, David wasn't paralyzed by fear. Instead, his heart burned with indignation that anyone would defy the armies of the living God. What seemed impossible to others seemed clear to David. The battle was not about size or strength, but about trusting God. David's courage would soon lead him to a moment that changed history. Every morning and evening, Goliath came forward, armored from head to toe, carrying a massive spear like a weaver's beam. His shield-bearer walked before him, adding to his fearsome image. Goliath's mocking voice spread terror. "Choose a man to fight me. If he kills me, we will serve you. But if I kill him, you will serve us." His challenge wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The Philistines wanted to break Israel's spirit before the battle even began. For 40 days, no warrior of Israel dared to answer. Even Saul, the king who once stood tall, shrank in fear. When David heard this challenge, he couldn't believe that no one had stepped forward. To David, this wasn't merely a fight against a man. It was a fight against arrogance and blasphemy. His words echoed through the camp. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? His boldness shocked everyone around him. But this young shepherd was about to demonstrate that true strength comes from faith, not fear. When David volunteered to fight Goliath, the camp erupted in disbelief. His brothers rebuked him, accusing him of arrogance. Soldiers laughed, dismissing him as a boy with no training. Even King Saul doubted. Saul said, "You are not able to go against this Philistine. You are only a youth, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David refused to be intimidated. He recalled how God had delivered him from the paw of the lion and the bear. "The Lord who rescued me then will rescue me now," David declared. Saul, with no better option, reluctantly agreed and offered David his armor. But when David tried it on, he could barely move. The heavy bronze weighed him down. "I cannot go in these," David said, removing them. Instead, he chose the simple tools he knew best: his shepherd's staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones from the brook. In the eyes of men, David looked unprepared. But in the eyes of God, he carried everything he needed. The valley grew silent as David walked forward to face Goliath. The boy with no armor, no sword, and only a sling in his hand stood against the towering warrior clad in bronze. Goliath sneered at the sight. Rage filled his voice as he mocked, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? Come closer, and I will feed your flesh to the birds and the beasts." The Philistines roared with laughter, confident of an easy victory. But David's eyes did not waver. With courage burning within him, he declared, "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin. But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." His words carried faith that shook the silence of the valley. This wasn't a battle between a boy and a giant. It was a battle between arrogance and faith, between human pride and divine power. And David was ready to strike. David reached into his pouch and pulled out a smooth stone. With steady hands, he placed it in his sling. The giant charged forward, each step shaking the ground. The Israelites gasped. But David ran quickly toward Goliath, swinging his sling with precision. The stone flew like lightning, guided not just by skill but by divine purpose. It struck Goliath in the forehead with such force that the giant stumbled, his laughter silenced, his massive frame crashing face first into the dust of the valley. Shock spread through the Philistine camp. The impossible had happened. The giant had fallen. David, the shepherd boy, had defeated the champion of the Philistines with a single stone. This moment was not only a victory for Israel, but a testimony that faith can move mountains, and that with God, even the smallest can overcome the mightiest. As the dust settled, David rushed forward, standing over the fallen giant. With no sword of his own, he took Goliath's massive blade and finished what God had already begun. The Philistines, stunned by the defeat of their champion, fled in terror. The Israelite soldiers, who moments before had cowered in fear, now surged forward with newfound courage, chasing their enemies and securing victory. What had once seemed hopeless turned into triumph, and at the center of it all stood David, a boy who trusted God more than his own strength, more than weapons, and more than appearances. His victory wasn't about personal glory, but about proving that God's power is unmatched. The battlefield that once echoed with Goliath's mocking voice now resounded with the shouts of victory. The story of David and Goliath is not just about a shepherd defeating a warrior. It is about the unshakable power of faith. David's courage came from knowing that the battle belonged to God. He didn't see a giant too big to fight. He saw a man too arrogant to stand against God. His faith turned fear into boldness and weakness into strength. Today, this story continues to inspire people facing giants of their own, giants of fear, doubt, hardship, or despair. David reminds us that our greatest battles are not won with swords or shields, but with faith, perseverance, and trust in God's promises. Goliath may symbolize the overwhelming obstacles we face, but David represents the victory that comes when we place our trust in something greater than ourselves. The story leaves us with timeless lessons. First, never underestimate what God can do through someone who trusts Him fully. David was young, inexperienced, and overlooked, yet he became a hero. Second, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. David stepped into the valley not because he was fearless, but because he trusted God more than his fears. Third, we learn that true strength isn't found in armor, wealth, or weapons. It's found in faith. Just as David relied on God instead of Saul's armor, we too must rely on spiritual strength when facing life's battles. Finally, victory often comes when we least expect it. One small stone, guided by faith, was enough to bring down a giant. David's triumph over Goliath was only the beginning of his journey. He would later become king of Israel, a man after God's own heart, remembered for both his victories and his struggles. Yet this one moment defined him forever as a symbol of courage, faith, and divine deliverance. Generations later, the story continues to echo, reminding us that no giant is too great, no obstacle too impossible, when faith leads the way. David's courage inspires us to face our own giants, not with fear, but with confidence that God fights for us. The valley of Elah, where a shepherd boy once stood against a giant, still speaks today. Courage and faith can change the course of history.